GFDR's Inclusive Disaster Risk Management and Gender Equality Cross-Cutting Priority Area works to advance and strengthen social resilience among communities to ensure that the most vulnerable are protected against the impacts of climate change and natural hazards. Significant progress has been made in integrating gender considerations across all of our activities, with 92% of approved grants under the umbrella this past fiscal year being gender-informed. We are also focusing on increasing the number of grants that incorporate disability considerations. With our global focus, we can identify trends and emerging topics to use our resources in the most efficient manner. We're seeing an increased demand and interest in supporting adaptive social protection and inclusive early warning systems across all regions. We're currently conducting a stocktake of best practices for inclusive adaptive social protection interventions, and we see 4 areas of opportunity. 1, to enhance social registries to inform hazard risk assessments to improve the identification of most at-risk groups. 2, to leverage economic inclusion activities to reduce livelihood vulnerability and enhance communities' resilience to disaster risks. 3, to adjust existing social protection programs to support disaster-affected populations. And 4, to strengthen public financial management for adaptive social protection programs. The second emerging theme builds on the momentum of the UN Early Warnings for All initiative that is an urgent climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction measure. As you know, early warning systems only work if the people at risk receive the warning and understand it and are able to act on it. This can be challenging given the diversity of the population at risk and how they may interpret and use the risk information that's conveyed as part of the early warning. To respond to this demand, GFDR is partnering with experts to identify scalable and replicable interventions and recommendations to operationalize inclusive early warning systems through bank financing and other channels.
Warnings are not a unidirectional or linear process of sending information to individuals and communities from scientific or government experts. This does not facilitate inclusivity or understanding. Instead, warnings should be a continual and accessible process involving everyone. That is inclusive warnings. An excellent example is in Fiji, where Women's Weather Watch trains a network of women leaders to use real-time information, interpret it, and then send it via text and social media in order to ensure that everyone in the community receives alerts about severe weather.
Based on the evidence compiled so far, we see an opportunity to scale up interventions that leverage participatory approaches to enable warnings that are linked to each community's local context and hazard profile. For example, Haiti is highly vulnerable to earthquakes and tropical storms. Because people didn't always understand the early warning messages about the threat level, the color coding, the Civil Protection Agency worked to develop a warning system that would be much more easily understood by the general population and could be broadcast on a variety of platforms that were commonly used by the local communities. They even used local music stars to prepare songs, dances on TVs, radio stations. They also had robocalls to people's cell phones. They really helped spread the word about emergency preparedness and response, especially among young people. We're also working to expand inclusive early warning systems that leverage community participation to identify groups that may need a differentiated approach to preparedness and warnings. For example, people with visual or hearing impairments, the elderly, people who may need extra support to evacuate or even just receive and interpret the warnings in a more accessible way. To build our global knowledge across the community of practitioners, we held 2 sessions on both of these topics during the Understanding Risk conference in Brazil this past November.
To build adaptive social protections in Indonesia, because learning from the pandemic of it, we need to have more adaptive social protections. So what we are doing in adaptive social protection is that we build at least 4 pillars. One is on how we can build the data through through socio-economic registry, and then strengthen the coordination mechanisms. And then the third one is on how we can build also more sustainable financing mechanisms. And then the fourth one is we have to also improve the awareness of the community.
One of the most important things in innovation is that we have been developing more models and methods of payment in order to provide to the beneficiaries, it doesn't matter if they're from the program or not, more opportunities to get this cash transfers. For example, we have developed recently as an SMS.
And we plan to continue this conversation with practitioners as the agenda evolves. Looking forward, we plan to scale up our technical assistance and financial support for inclusive disaster risk management and gender equality to ensure that no one is left behind before, during, or after a disaster strikes. Thank you for your attention.
As part of GFDRR's strategy, FCV has been a cross-cutting thematic area that we continue to engage in. The reason being that out of 15 countries with the highest vulnerability to disaster, 14 are among the top 50 fragile states. And FCV settings are also notoriously difficult to operate in, with design and implementation times for projects and technical assistance twice as long as non-FCV setting. DRM projects, as you may know, with their multi-sectoral nature, take much longer. So GFDRR offers a unique vantage point to influence the programming of disaster risk management activities in FCV context through two elements. The first one is a country-level programming. So very few FCV country-level programming documents for development financing integrate DRM. This is a significant obstacle for meaningful engagement in the topic. So internally, we are influencing the policy and programming dialogue that defines how the World Bank engages in FCV countries. The aim for that is to enable World Bank clients to take better advantage of disaster risk management knowledge when shaping the development priorities they seek World Bank support for. So, for example, on the Mauritania Risk and Resilience Assessment, a key document that is led by the World Bank's FCV group and that will influence the bank's operational programming in the country, GFDRR's support has helped to ensure that disaster risk understanding and its specific links with fragility is reflected in the underlying analysis of the assessment, and that this understanding is permeating through the concept that frames the assessment. Our input also feeds into the early part of the policy work that could lead to the institutional actions that Mauritania may choose to formalize and program as contingent financing operations. The bank also does around 20 of such assessments in FCV countries each year, which makes this approach a key lever to build an ability to influence better DRM work in FCV countries at scale. The second point is a project-by-project support. An example of that is the Yemen Integrated Urban Services Emergency Project. This project was designed as an emergency operation to provide essentially quick fixes to urban roads and municipal infrastructure in a select number of cities in Yemen. GFDRR's grants and technical support has, during the implementation and subsequent design phases of the project, enabled the team to integrate first hazard analytics in the project and then flood risk reduction investments into the thinking about the different phases. We're currently supporting the task team with the innovative ways to include early warning systems as part of the next phase of the project. Both levels are important, and while the majority of GFDRR's resources will be focused on the project level, we will continue to seek influence on the two simultaneously. At the technical level, based on our work on DRM in FCV countries over the past 5 years, we're starting to focus our work streams along 3 lines. The first one is mainstreaming DRM in FCV countries. We have learned from our analysis of World Bank projects that it is much more difficult to lead policy dialogue in DRM, and particularly DRR in FCV countries. This also has been highlighted in the latest 2022 IG report on the World Bank DRM engagements. So GFDRR will seek to focus its mainstreaming efforts on making available and adapting specific tools to be relevant to the FCV countries we work with. These can be tools adapted to understand populations' movements, damage assessments, hazard assessments, governance and preparedness capacity support, and so on. And hopefully this will result in activities that combine technical knowledge from across several GFDRR technical work lines that could potentially act in a consolidated manner and in collaboration with other FCV-focused teams. The second aspect is ensuring conflict-sensitive DRM financing operations and advisory services. GFDRR will play a knowledge aggregator role related to the many simultaneously ongoing learning experiences in FCV countries, and make the experience immediately available to new task teams and development professionals who engage in DRM and conflict-affected areas, thus increasing our collective understanding of what conflict sensitivity means in DRM operations. This should result in better planned and better implemented DRM in development finance engagement in FCV settings. The third and final element is the understanding of the interplay between disasters and conflict and fragility. The IAG report again highlighted the fact that there is a missed opportunity in addressing both the root causes for disasters and fragility in conflicts. So GFDRR is in this unique position to contribute to the global and project-level technical and economic knowledge base. One outcome of such work will be better economic rationales for addressing the nexus and a raised awareness within and outside the bank on the interlinkages between the two. So looking forward, we are planning a technical advisory group meeting to go over our work plan for the remainder of the fiscal year and into FY24, and to discuss the work streams we just mentioned in detail. The proposal for the dates will be shared with you as part of the follow-up to this meeting. Thank you very much for your attention.